My wife told me she would never get pregnant or have a child for anyone. But I came home to find out that she had been pregnant for a month, and I had just returned from a 2-month business trip. Fernando, listen to me carefully. I, Julia, have no intention of ever having children because no man is worth the pain of carrying a child for 10 months. Julia told me this during a company dinner. As I left the gathering amidst the complex gazes of others, I returned home only to find a package waiting for me. Julia's pregnancy report. She was already 1 month along, and I had just come back from a 2-month business trip. Despite this profound betrayal, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. I calmly called Julia and said, "Let's find a time to get divorced." "Fernando, what are you talking about? Just because I won't have kids for you, you want to divorce me?" Her voice dripped with disdain. "Julia, look at this little sock. Shouldn't we get it for our baby?" A soft male voice chimed in. It was Miguel, her childhood friend. The call ended abruptly. I glanced at the villa I had called home for 7 years and exhaled deeply. This house had been purchased outright before our marriage, but now it felt tainted. I decided to move out and sell it. As I packed my things, the door swung open. Julia entered, her arm entwined with Miguel's. "Fernando, where are the slippers? Miguel is cold. Could you grab a pair for him?" Julia commanded me. As usual, Miguel wore a smug smile, his eyes taunting me as he softly added, "Fernando, could you help us out?" I shoved my design sketches into my suitcase without responding or looking at them. Their presence made me nauseous, like being drunk and then getting into a bumpy car surrounded by a sickly sweet perfume. "Are you deaf?" Julia yelled, throwing one of her high heels at me. I dodged it and shot her a cold glance, but chose silence. Noticing my suitcase for the first time, she frowned and asked, "What's going on?" "I told you on the phone." "Divorce," I replied flatly. Though I had once loved her deeply, disappointment had piled up until love vanished in an instant. "Fernando, are you throwing a tantrum?" "I've told you before, I'm not into women." "Julia is just my best friend," Miguel added mockingly. "Let's make amends. Please don't be upset. I'll try not to bother Julia anymore." "Miguel, what did you do wrong?" "It's Fernando's jealousy that's causing all this trouble. It has nothing to do with you. And he's upset just because I won't give him children." Julia shot me a loathing look. She glared at me and said, "If I had known you'd react this way, I wouldn't have married you." "It's not too late to leave," I said, securing my suitcase and checking my drawing equipment before heading for the door. "I'll list the villa with an agent. You should hurry and move out." "You're selling our house?" Julia shrieked. Suddenly, she grabbed my arm. "Fernando, I'm only refusing to have kids. Is that really worth a divorce? We agreed you wouldn't pressure me about children. You brought it up in front of everyone today. I only spoke my mind. Don't touch me. You're filthy," I retorted, shaking off her grip. "Filthy?" Julia shot back, incredulous. "Are you out of your mind, Fernando?" Her anger flared even more. She had always been proud, and my blatant disdain was clearly unbearable for her. "Isn't that the case?" I countered. "And it was Enrique who brought up the child today, not me. But even if it were me, you should have saved face for me in front of others. Instead, you didn't. Do you think so little of me? Who doesn't know you and Enrique are close? He was just speaking for you," she snapped. "And what face do you think you need? I'm the company's chairwoman. It's because I'm your wife that you have any face at all. Once we're divorced, what will you have left?" Her face was filled with mockery as she looked at me. I fell silent, struggling to comprehend how she could say such things. Seeing my silence, Julia thought she had me cornered. She pointed at me and said, "Now apologize to Miguel immediately, or I won't forgive you. Fernando loves you so much. It's normal for him to be jealous." "He doesn't need to apologize," Miguel chimed in with a tone that seemed understanding, but was filled with provocation and smugness. "Did you hear that, Fernando? Miguel is so kind and generous while you're always petty," Julia scoffed. "If Miguel wasn't into women, I might not have even chosen you, because you've been such a disappointment." When I remained silent, Miguel added in a whiny voice, "All right, Julia, don't be too hard on Fernando. Here's what, I'll apologize to him. If he still isn't satisfied, I'll even kneel down and apologize." To my surprise, he actually knelt before me. "Fernando, it was all my fault," he said through tears. "Although I don't like women, I'm still a man in others' eyes. Being around Julia must make you feel embarrassed. That's my oversight, Fernando. I sincerely apologize to you now and promise to cut ties with Julia." Julia's anger only intensified at this scene. She slapped me across the face without warning. I casually brushed her hand away and looked at them coldly. How could she betray me and still have the audacity to lay a hand on me? How dare you hit me? She exclaimed, disbelief written all over her face. I met her gaze silently and said, Julia, I've been away on business for 2 months while you've been pregnant for 1 month with someone else's child. I really want to know where you get the nerve to bark at me like this. As I spoke, I slapped the pregnancy report against her face. Her complexion drained instantly. Panic filled her eyes, but in a heartbeat, her expression hardened. Fernando, I'm your wife. How dare you investigate me? Don't you trust me at all? She shouted. You're pregnant with someone else's child and can still say that? You really are something. I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. And just so you know, I never investigated you. This pregnancy report just arrived by courier. Miguel cried out, Julia, maybe I filled out the wrong address. That's why Fernando got angry. It's all my fault? It's not your fault, she snapped back at him. This isn't even a big deal. You shouldn't be angry over something like this. She turned her cold stare back to me and said, Fernando, it's your own filthy mind that sees everything as dirty. How could she blame me for being dirty when she was carrying another man's child? Her shamelessness only deepened my disgust. When I found out, I felt a mix of anger and unexpected relief. The truth was I no longer loved her, so her betrayal didn't sting as much as it might have. But Julia's shameless attitude truly infuriated me. So tell me, where exactly am I being dirty? I asked seriously. Julia shot back, the baby in my belly is Miguel's. But we didn't do anything, it was artificial insemination. So what? I nearly laughed at her absurdity. What do you mean, so what? I pressed. Fernando, don't you have any compassion? Miguel has faced immense pressure from his family because of his sexual orientation. He wants a child to ease their worries. And since we grew up together, I felt I had an obligation to help him, she continued. Would you really want to see Miguel suffer under that pressure? Her self-righteousness was astounding, as if she had performed some grand act of charity. I couldn't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. Julia, we've been married for years, and you wouldn't even consider having a child with me. You publicly declared today that no man is worth the suffering of 10 months of pregnancy. Yet here you are pregnant with another man's child. Where's your dignity? I coldly asked. Julia glared at me and said, So you're still upset because I won't have your child? You're so petty. I'm just disappointed in you. Enough. I really don't want to waste my time arguing with your ridiculous logic. I waved my hand dismissively. I'll prepare the divorce papers, and you should hurry up and move out. With that, I turned to leave. Miguel suddenly cried out, Julia, if you two get divorced, our baby will be born into a single-parent household. He was clearly hoping Julia would take this opportunity to declare she'd marry him, thus avoiding any talk of single parenthood. But Julia grabbed me by the arm with disgust in her eyes and said, Fernando, stop making a scene. You heard what was said. If we divorce, this baby will be raised without both parents. You can't be so cold-hearted. So, what do you mean? I asked. You're suggesting we stay married and raise the child together with Miguel? I wanted to knock some sense into her. It was unbelievable. Miguel jumped in again. Fernando, you don't need to worry about this. Once the baby is born, I'll be around to help take care of it. And then we'll all live happily together as a family of 4. I couldn't help but laugh again in disbelief. Miguel nodded earnestly. Fernando, isn't that a good thing? Good? Are you out of your mind? Julia has no brains. Do you think I'm an idiot too? What normal man would allow his wife to carry another man's child? I scoffed and shrugged off Julia's grip as I headed for the door. Fernando, that's so rude. How can you talk like that? Julia rushed after me. I turned to give her a cold look and said flatly, Julia, we're adults here. Let's keep some dignity and sort out this divorce quickly. Then I stepped back toward Miguel and looked at his pretentious face before throwing a punch that sent him crashing to the floor, blood pouring from his nose. That punch was a warning. Stay out of my way, I warned him. If I were you, I'd focus on living with Julia the trash instead of bothering me. As I turned to leave again, Julia shouted after me, Fernando, you've lost your mind. How can you hit someone? And who are you calling trash? I'm still your wife. Julia lunged at me in one swift motion, but I slapped her across the face hard enough to send her sprawling to the ground. Listen closely, Julia. When I loved you, there were many things I could tolerate. But now that I've stopped loving you, think carefully about yourself and remember how we got together in the first place. Julia seemed unable to believe that I would actually hit her. But as she looked into my eyes and saw my resolve, panic flickered across her face. After leaving the villa, I drove to the spacious apartment near my company. I had purchased this place some time ago, but rarely stayed here. After a quick tidying up, I dove into work. The company was currently handling a massive project, and the blueprints were in the final stages. They needed to be completed urgently. In the past, Julia might have affected my mood and hindered my ability to work. However, with her absence, I felt a sense of relief. I pushed through until midnight, finishing the final touches on the project. After a few hours of sleep, I headed straight to the office. Such a significant project required the final design draft to be presented at the board meeting. In the conference room, while discussing project issues with the board members, the door was suddenly flung open. Julia stormed in with Miguel and a dozen security guards. Miguel was dressed in a well-tailored suit, no longer appearing effeminate. His face radiated smugness. "Fernando, you're fired. Leave now." Miguel pointed at me as if I were a dog being shooed away. My laugh was nearly uncontrollable as Miguel pointed at me, declaring my dismissal as if he were on a theatrical stage. The meeting room, previously silent, now filled with confused looks and murmurs. The board members, people who knew my work well, exchanged glances, unsure how to react to the absurd scene unfolding before them. I took a deep breath, composing myself. I looked directly at Miguel, who wore his usual smug smile, and said with as much calm as I could muster, "Miguel, I don't know who gave you this illusion of power, but this company is mine, and there's nothing you can do to remove me." He blinked a few times, clearly unsettled by my calm tone, but before he could open his mouth, I continued, "Oh, and by the way, storming into a private meeting with security guards isn't just against company policy. It's a crime. I'll enjoy suing you for trespassing and public harassment." His face turned red with anger, but he still tried to maintain his composure. "Fernando, this is ridiculous. Julia and I own the company now. She transferred her shares to me, and I'll run things my way." That was when I noticed Julia standing behind him, wearing the same contemptuous expression she had shown before. Arms crossed, she radiated superiority. "Did you really think I wouldn't have a plan, Fernando? While you worked day and night, I made sure everything would fall under my control. And now you're out." It was unbelievable. Julia, the woman I had shared my life with for years, now stood beside Miguel, actively trying to destroy everything I had built. Yet instead of exploding in anger, I smiled. A cold, ironic smile. "You two really think you caught me off guard, don't you?" I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling through my gallery. "First of all, Julia, you seem to have forgotten a small detail. The transfer of shares you're bragging about was done illegally because our marriage agreement includes a clause prohibiting the sale of shared assets without my consent. And, as far as I can see, you never consulted me about this." Julia's face paled for a moment, but quickly recovered. "That doesn't matter. I have proof that you're not a trustworthy husband. Do you think no one will believe me?" At that moment, I connected my phone to the projector in the room and began playing a video. It was a recent recording of a conversation between Julia and Miguel, captured by a device I had placed in the house days before I moved out. In the recording, Julia outlined her plans to deceive the company, transfer the shares, and ultimately get rid of me. Julia's panicked expression as the video played was priceless. Miguel, on the other hand, began visibly sweating. This doesn't prove anything," he stammered, his voice trembling. "You can't use private recordings against us." "Oh, but I can," I replied calmly, "especially when they prove you're attempting fraud. I've already sent all this to my lawyer, and he's handling the rest." The meeting room was completely silent. The board members now looked at Julia and Miguel with obvious disdain. My tone hardened. "Julia, Miguel, you may try to destroy what I've built, but you won't succeed. And now that I have enough evidence, not only will you lose this company, but you'll also face legal consequences." Julia tried to speak, but I raised a hand to stop her. "Enough. This is over for both of you. I'll make sure everything you've done is exposed." The security guards, who had been standing like statues, began shifting uncomfortably, unsure of what to do. Then one of the board members, an older and respected man named Augusto, stood and spoke for the first time. "Fernando, I believe everyone here agrees that your leadership is indispensable. You have our full support to resolve this situation." With Augusto's authority backing me, Julia and Miguel began verbally attacking each other, each blaming the other for the fiasco. I left the meeting room, letting them drown in the chaos they had created. In the following days, the share transfers were reversed, and Julia was formally charged with fraud and violating our marital agreement. Miguel, attempting to escape the accusations, fled but was soon found hiding in a cheap apartment. As for me, I regained full control of the company and, for the first time in months, felt I had complete autonomy over my life. Not only was I free from a woman who never respected me, but I had also exposed her true nature and that of her accomplice, who tried to play the villain. Today, I look back with no regrets. Julia and Miguel destroyed themselves, while I rebuilt my life stronger and more determined than ever. And above all, I proved that no one crosses me without consequences. The silence in the meeting room was almost palpable, broken only by Miguel's authoritative voice. "Fernando, you're fired. Leave now." He pointed at me as if I were a dog being shooed away, and Julia, standing beside him, wore that smug smile only she could manage. The smile of someone who believed they had already won. I took a deep breath. My initial instinct was to explode, but I knew that would only give them the spectacle they were hoping for. Instead, I straightened my posture and looked around. The board members appeared visibly uncomfortable with the way the meeting was unfolding. Some frowned, while others murmured amongst themselves. There was no indication that they agreed with how Miguel and Julia were handling the situation. "With all due respect, Julia," I began, directing my gaze at her. "And Miguel, of course." I paused strategically, letting my words hang in the air. "I understand that both of you want to humiliate me publicly, but before I leave, I believe I have the right to defend myself and clarify a few things." Julia rolled her eyes. "Fernando, please. You're not important enough to need an explanation." "Am I not?" I shot back with a cold smile. "Perhaps not to you, but to this company, to the work I've done over the years. I believe my contributions speak for themselves. And, more importantly, I think the board deserves to know why you're trying to turn a personal issue into a professional one." This seemed to capture the board's attention. One of them, Mr. Augusto, who had always remained neutral, raised his hand. "Julia, I believe Fernando has the right to speak, given the potential impact of this decision on the company." Julia huffed, clearly irritated. "If that's what you want, then let him speak. But he's only wasting our time." Ignoring her comment, I began. "Over the past few years, I've dedicated my life to this company. My contributions, as many of you know, have been significant to the growth of major projects. I've never brought personal problems into the workplace, but unfortunately, the same cannot be said about Julia and Miguel." Miguel tried to interrupt, but I continued without giving him a chance. "What's happening here has nothing to do with my performance or my professional conduct. This attempt to fire me is a personal retaliation. Julia is my wife, or at least she was, until I discovered that she was pregnant by another man while I was away on a business trip. And that man is Miguel." I made sure to look directly at him as I said it. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Some board members looked surprised. Others seemed uncomfortable. "And what does that have to do with your professional conduct?" Julia retorted, trying to regain her composure. "You assaulted Miguel in our home. That's unacceptable, inside or outside of work." "Oh, so that's what this is about?" I asked, feigning surprise. "You're trying to use a personal issue to justify firing me, even though my professional conduct is impeccable? Interesting. Perhaps the board should consider who is truly acting outside professional boundaries here." Mr. Augusto interjected again. "Julia, is it true what Fernando is saying? Is this a personal matter being brought into the corporate sphere?" Julia hesitated. For the first time, her confidence seemed to waver. "That doesn't matter. He's a threat to the integrity of the workplace. Besides, Miguel is already preparing a lawsuit against him for homophobia, due to the punch he received." "Homophobia?" I asked, incredulous. "Miguel, if you're going to sue me for something, at least be honest. I punched you because you were disrespecting me and my marriage, not because you're gay. I won't tolerate having the facts twisted." The board began murmuring again. Some members appeared uncomfortable with the mention of a homophobia accusation. "Regardless," I continued, "the focus should be on the leadership of this company. Julia, as president, you're prioritizing your personal problems over the company's interests. That's not just unethical, it's dangerous." Mr. Augusto spoke again. "Julia, I'm hearing very concerning things here. I believe the board needs to seriously discuss your conduct as president." Julia's face turned red. "You can't be serious. I'm the president of this company. Everything I've done has been to protect it. And bringing security guards into a board meeting? Trying to fire a respected employee for personal reasons? Does that seem like protection to you?" Augusto shot back. The vote was swift. The majority of the board decided to remove Julia from her position as president, for the good of the company. She stormed out of the room, furious, dragging Miguel behind her. Miguel, for his part, couldn't stop throwing angry glances my way. In the following days, Miguel's lawsuit for homophobia was officially filed, but with the evidence I had gathered and the witnesses who supported me, the case was quickly dismantled. The court not only dismissed the accusations, but also highlighted that the attempt to use a personal conflict to defame me was, in itself, an abuse of the judicial system. Miguel left the courtroom humiliated, and the impact of his defeat resonated both inside and outside the company. Meanwhile, Julia's departure left the presidency vacant, and the company needed someone capable of restoring stability after weeks of scandals. The board members, aware of my track record of contributions and the professional manner in which I had handled the situation, began discussing a definitive solution. It was during an extraordinary board meeting that my life took an unexpected turn. Mr. Augusto, who had shown himself to be my ally from the beginning, took the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, it is undeniable that Fernando has demonstrated integrity, competence, and commitment to this company, even amidst a storm of personal issues unjustly brought into the workplace. I propose that he be appointed as the next president. The proposal was met with nods of approval and praise. Several board members mentioned specific projects I had led and how my conduct, even in the face of adversity, had been exemplary. The vote was unanimous. When my appointment was announced, I was speechless for a few moments. I deeply appreciate the trust you all have placed in me, I said, trying to hold back my emotions. I promise to repay it with dedication and results. I know the recent events have been difficult for everyone, but I am committed to restoring trust and leading this company to new heights. With my appointment formalized, I immediately began working on initiatives to rebuild the company's reputation and stabilize the workplace environment. I restructured teams, implemented stricter ethics policies, and created a safe channel for employees to report issues without fear of retaliation. Miguel attempted to maintain a presence in the company for a while, but his credibility was shattered, and he eventually resigned a few months later. Julia, on the other hand, disappeared from the corporate scene and never again attempted to interfere in my path. Today, looking back, I feel a mix of gratitude and satisfaction. Gratitude for those who believed in me when everything seemed lost, and satisfaction for having won in a fair and just manner. Now, as president, I work every day to ensure that no one else goes through what I endured and to help the company thrive based on solid values and mutual respect. If this experience taught me anything, it is that integrity and truth always find a way to prevail. Months had passed since everything unfolded, and my life had finally found its rhythm. The company was thriving under my leadership, and the peace I had longed for had settled in. Julia and Miguel were nothing more than a closed chapter, or so I thought. I truly believed I would never hear about them again, until one day, I received a message from a former colleague. Fernando, you won't believe what just happened. Julia and Miguel are caught up in an even bigger scandal. Curious, I replied immediately, asking for more details. That's when he told me. Julia's baby had been born, but a few months later, she decided to betray Miguel, and the situation had become very public. The most absurd part? She was now suing Miguel, demanding child support for the baby. When I heard this, I couldn't stop myself from bursting into loud, genuine laughter. It was almost unbelievable that the same woman who had schemed so much to bring me down was now tearing apart her own accomplice. Her move was direct and ruthless. She had used Miguel just like she tried to use me, and in the end, he faced the same fate she had planned for me: total humiliation. It was a strange but deeply satisfying feeling. The revenge I didn't even have to plan turned out to be much sweeter than anything I could have imagined. Watching Julia and Miguel destroy each other was, without a doubt, far more gratifying than the day Julia was removed from the presidency. It was the ultimate proof that the universe has a delightfully ironic way of delivering justice. I laughed a lot that day. Then, I returned to work with a smile that didn't fade for hours. After all, some battles are best won by simply watching from a distance.